Hey there friends, what's up? Kevin here from the MSOTD Rocks YouTube channel, and today is another episode of the Kevin Figures Out series, and who's on the chopping block today? It's ERRA. Before we get started though, please follow MSOTD Rocks on places like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You will get the 30-second song a day posts on all three of those platforms to expand your musical horizons in rock, metal, and their subgenres in terms of what is popular in the scene today, and of course what is up and coming and going to be the biggest in the scene by the end of the decade. You can also connect with us on all those platforms. We can post any kind of announcements on all those platforms. Connect with us, comment with us. We will answer back. Actually, I'll answer back because I'm the only one doing this stuff. Haha. And also on Instagram, you can check out our IGTV video series every single Tuesday night, which is behind the scenes look at what's going on here and some new things that we're going to be doing. And also every single Wednesday night, we go live on Instagram for about an hour at 9 p.m. Central, maybe a little bit longer. And lately, we've been having a lot more fun on there. Last week, we played Cards Against Humanity. This week, I think we might be doing Among Us, so we're going to be playing more games on there. Please come and join us. Please also subscribe to this YouTube channel because not only are you going to get these Kevin Figures Out videos, you'll get our album reviews, which we've done in the past and some coming up over the next couple of weeks. We also do different videos detailing emerging bands in the scene today, different top 10 lists, and our year-end awards, of course. You can take a look at what we thought were the best and worst of each given year. And on this YouTube channel is also where the Chord Progression podcast lives. Yes, it's our very own podcast where we are interviewing different bands in the scene that are mostly upcoming, emerging, that you're going to want to get to know about. We've done bands such as Human Collapse, GFM, Rosie, Modern Day Escape. We've done bands like Worth the Wait, Waking Terra. They were funny as all hell. Hell, last week on our video for Kevin Figures Out, we did Varsity. Right after that video, we set up an interview with Joey from Varsity, so you're going to be able to check that one out when it comes out. You can find the podcast and all the videos right here on YouTube, or you can listen on Spotify, Podcasts, and iHeart Radio. Link, subscription below for everything, so like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, post on your social media, tell your neighbor who probably doesn't like rock or metal, but make them like it anyway. Enough with that, let's go.
Time to go.
So a little bit of background before we get going on this video. Why do I do these videos? It's because I want to find bands that I do not know that much in the scene today in rock, metal, and other subgenres, and I want to figure out about them, get to know if I like them or not, because how else am I going to know about them if I don't try and figure it out? Bands that have done this series include Dance Gavin Dance, Baby Metal, who I really like now, Poppy, Spirit Box, Diamante, we've done Varsity, and now we're doing ERRA. But why am I doing ERRA? There are two major reasons. One, I have done a song a day post on with Snowblood before, and that's the only song I really know from the band. Second is because with their self-titled album coming out back on March 19, 2021, Mr. Metalcore on Twitter, Mr. Alan Harrington, shout out to you because you do all the great metalcore work on Twitter. You talked about this album, and you said that it was a rather good album. You gave it a thing where it's like 3 out of the 5 songs that are on there are some of your favorite from the band. It might not be your favorite album overall, but you do absolutely really like where they're going with it. So I thought, I do want to listen to this album, but why don't I do a figure out video on them? Let's just go for it all. So before we get started, here is how this works. First, I'm going to look at the band's 5 albums. We're going to run through the music. I'm going to give you my thoughts on it, and we're going to see if I like it there or not. Second, I'm going to go through the image of the gimmick, what makes the band special, see how they present themselves, see how they present themselves in music videos and in a live setting, and see if that's something I can get behind. And third, I'm going to be taking a look at their social media accounts and seeing how they interact with the community of fans that they have and how the fans interact with each other, and see if that's something I want to get a part of. And then I'm going to throw all 3 together and figure out if I like them or not. Remember, the music is the most important part, so that will weigh more. However, the image of the gimmick can sway things a certain way. So let's get into it, shall we? Before we get started though, let me grab these earphones, headphones, whatever, because I gotta listen to the music. Let's get started. Let's talk about it. So the first record I'm going to be looking at is Impulse, their first album from 2021, and not gonna lie, this is the first time I've ever done with these Figures Out series where I've listened to the first album and I was pretty much instantly hooked, to the point where I even tweeted about this being instantly hooked, and the band saw it and liked it, so I'm like, oh boy. So what stuck out to me the most about Impulse and the sound that ERRA had on this, and it was just the way that they structured their heavy, more guttural sound in terms of metalcore, but also what they did with the lead guitars is because for the most part of it, what they ended up doing was they had this heavy bass instrumentation with the bass guitar, with the rhythm guitar, and with the drums, using this heavy burst style, which really gave way to a lot of the great guttural metalcore sound, especially with the unclean vocals on top of it. But on every single song, the lead guitar ended up having this higher pitch to it that really contrasted well against it and really stuck with the pace as well. What this created was just this very dynamic sounding thing that just gave the songs just this incredible life to them and hooked me every step of the way. The reason this worked out so well is two ways. One is because when I looked at the different distortions, they weren't super heavy programmed as well. They just looked like they were different tunes and different tones. So it seemed a lot more natural, and fitting with that more guttural, more raw metalcore sound in the backing, it worked out incredibly well. Plus, when they varied the pace, whether it was melodic to contrast against the heavier instrumentation that's going faster, or connecting it better with the overall pace of the song, this just worked out for the best. I absolutely loved it. Let's take a look at a couple examples of this one, starting with White Noise. And that was a track that really hooked me into it because they had this high distortion and higher tune on the guitar overall, especially in the verses, but it works well to create that contrast against the heavy bursting sound of the instrumentation that everything just stood out for the better, and it was very dynamic overall throughout. Take a look at Invent as well, where the cleaner guitar tone goes melodic, especially over that rap and heavy guttural metalcore sound, to create honestly what was my favorite blend on the whole entire album was this one song. And then Efflorescent was another one of these because they had this lighter metalcore approach in terms of the guitar tone overall, but uses a rougher tone, a little more melodic sense as well to really create this more downtrodden feel of the song, but it had this lighter overall feel so it wasn't as guttural, but the fact of the matter was it blended in so well that I couldn't get enough of it. Also take a look at the unclean vocals, which is another thing I really liked about this album, because you took a look at the heavier, harder backing instrumentals that were on this, especially from the drums, the bass, and the rhythm guitar. It worked so well in comparison to create this guttural sound that I thought was absolutely at ERRA's core on this album. Then, when they contrast against that lighter, maybe higher pitch, higher distortion lead guitar that was in there, it created this overall contrasting feel, but it brought out so much more dynamics, so much more light into the album as well that, I mean, you could focus on anything, and this was fantastic. When I'm thinking about examples for this, I'm not even going to list any examples because each song on this album with Impulse fits this. Just pick one. Pick any one. You're going to find it. The unclean vocals on Impulse, oh man, they were good. I want to talk about the clean vocals as well because with this being the first album from ERRA, for the most part, I thought the clean vocals were rather on point, but there were times they were a little bit off. Taking a look at where they were on point, take a look at Efflorescent, where the clean vocals have this higher pitch, especially in the chorus, but they didn't necessarily pierce my ears, and they really worked with the more melodic approach to the song, so I was a big fan of this. Heart is another one where they had the melodic clean mixing with an unclean fast pace to create this great overall mix that I really did like on this album. And then Render the Void. This is something where I saw with that melodic sense going against that heavier instrumentation from that the clean vocals had, again, contrasting it. And you guys know I love to hear this stuff, especially when writing against something with Tim McElrath, because he's a perfectionist at this. What ERRA did on this one, very similar in terms of the effect on it, so I was a big fan. However, there were times with the clean vocals that they went a little too high and they had this more squeaky tone to them, which is okay. I mean, I get it. It's your first album. Makes total sense that it's not going to be perfect. However, it's something I'm like, I just don't want to see them go down that road again just because it does take a lot away from the song when you're going with that big of a contrast. Pattern Interrupt does it because the clean vocals, the chorus are high, but that tone has a squeak to it. It just doesn't hit right. But again, this isn't always on the album. It's like on one or two songs, and Pattern Interrupt is going to be the example of this. But overall, I mean, this hooked me on ERRA's sound. This was absolutely nuts. I love the construction on their songs. I love the guttural core to it. My God, this was fun. Let's go to the next one. Their second album, Augment, came out in 2013, and to put it bluntly right for you right now, everything I hope that ERRA would have done on this second album, and after seeing Mr. Alan Harrington calling it his favorite ERRA album, everything I wanted them to do following Impulse, they did. So what do I mean by that? The band, of course, kept the heavier backing instrumentals, but also kept the contrasting lead guitar with the higher pitch distortion, but they also mix in a couple of different things as well. They mix in more of this more hard rock kind of style, maybe some lighter metal style as well, that they didn't do on Impulse, and that really created this even more dynamic sense within this album. This was something that I was a big fan of. Couple examples, take a look at Pulse because it does have more of this lighter overlaying guitar, again, a more classic hard rock approach that does kind of take a little bit of the intensity out of the song, but it doesn't necessarily remove the heaviness from it in contrast. It really does work out well to keep the heaviness, but keep it more of a lighter feel at the same time as well. Rebirth also does it with this lighter genty feel, so it works well against that rapid guttural bass in the verses, and it keeps the heaviness, but the contrasting sound just absolutely ups the quality of this song because both the heavier parts and the genty parts of the higher pitched distorted guitar really do play off each other. And then Spirits Away, the drumming is absolutely heavy, but the overlaying guitar has this more post-hardcore feel to it, giving a lighter, more accessible metalcore feel. And if you're looking for a more modern example of how something like this works, take a look at a song like The Path, or anything really off of The Path by Fit for a King, which came out in 2020. They did this in 2013. I absolutely love the move on here. I gotta go back to the unclean vocals again is another thing I like because they did keep that heavy guttural sound, but especially contrasting against some of these newer guitar tones and the lead guitar to contrast against them just absolutely stood out as a perfect thing for me. Take a look at a couple examples. Rebirth, heavy unclean vocals really make this guttural sound in the core come out, but contrasting against that lighter genty guitar tone just gives this contrasting beauty that really brings out the song very powerfully and just blends it well together to your ears. Ultraviolet has the heavy vocals working so well against the faster pacing to keep up the energy of the overall song, but contrast against the lighter overall guitar covering it, kind of let the song flow between the clean and unclean parts of this overall song. I thought it was fantastic on that mix. And then Alpha Seed. Unclean vocals create so much energy that when the verses have this clean and unclean call and response kind of style, it keeps up the overall intensity of the song and also works to contrast against that lighter guitar tone. My god, this Augment album is just fantastic. I gotta talk about Jesse Cash's clean vocals as well on this because yes, he did play with that more higher register as well, but there's a lot more control and I didn't hear any of those squeaky pieces to it. I thought that his voice really matured from 2011 to 2013 and it really did show on this album. Take a look at Alpha Seed. The higher pitched melodic chorus is like their bread and butter when they're going with this, but the control is so well done that it flows so with the higher pitched guitar that is over the overall song. Dreamwalkers, the cleaner chorus and more melodic flow to it, but it works so well that you feel like you're walking through a dream, and the song title just perfectly fits into this. One last thing I really liked about this album was the fact that in the second half, they did have a little more of this lighter metalcore feel where the lighter guitar tones were definitely more prominent and the overall back instrumentation again was heavy, but it was a little bit dropped back, so it wasn't as prominent as well. But the why I like this work is because, again, the unclean vocals still worked into bringing that guttural core to it, and the clean vocals really did work to play this overall just consistent flowing style through it. And it made it a lot more accessible for a lot of fans to get into. I absolutely love the move on here. Take a look at songs like Prometheus, Crimson, and Dementia. It just works out so well, and I can easily see why Mr. Alan Harrington loves this album. This is probably my favorite album from ERRA as well, their 2013 outing on Augment, so after two albums, I mean, come on. This is going to be a yes, pretty much, unless something drastic happens. Now going into Drift, ERRA's 2016 release, and I started seeing a little bit of a change here on this one, where they were starting to include a bit more of this progressive metalcore style with a little bit more of this like electronic distortion there, a little more electronic enhanced style programmed on there to maybe smooth it out a little bit. And I could understand the move, but not gonna lie, gonna give you some context here. This is something I really usually don't go for. There are times where I do, there's times where I don't, but the times that I don't outweigh the times that I do. The reason behind that is because when I listen to metalcore or anything that I listen to, hard rock, punk rock especially, I love the fact when they just have that raw, visceral style of instrumentation where they really don't smooth it out very much because personally I connect with them more. It feels more like real life to me. So I want to put that in here before going into Drift, but now we have to go into it and I'll honestly be honest with you guys on it. So what made me not really care about this album as much as I did the first two, and a lot of it is the prog metalcore inspired guitar work, especially on that lighter guitar over the heavier instrumentals. And the reason behind that is because, in my opinion, again, it kind of smooths everything out a little bit. It still has a heavy feel to it, but it does remove some of that guttural and intense energy that ERRA has had at their core from the past two albums. It is something that I really resonate well with, so on this, again, losing it for a little bit wasn't my favorite thing. Take a look at Skyline because it has this ballad inspiration style with a more genty guitar and some less heavy drums, again, taking away from that guttural core that I'm really connecting with. Hourglass is another one because during the unclean pieces, the drumming takes more of this like fill-focused style, not just heavy bursting, more guttural sound. Again, it's focused on a lot of different fills, and it just doesn't bring forward that heaviness that the songs had had in the past that I really connected with. So I'm not enjoying this as much as I did the last ones. One thing I really liked about the last two albums was just how the balance between the guitars worked and how the balance between the guitar and the vocals worked. And there were times on Drift where I thought that balance wasn't necessarily there. Take a look at the titular song, for example, because I thought the higher pitched guitar sound especially when the unclean vocals came in, really kind of mixed it so that that higher pitch sound just overtook what the unclean vocals were doing. So again, the mix just wasn't there to really take full the contrast because I thought that guitar was overpowering what the vocals were doing. But was there something that I liked off of Drift? And I'm gonna be honest with you, yes, the second half is where I really liked more of the album because I saw them taking more of that prog metalcore style, especially with that guitar and the overall construction of the songs, but they brought back some of that heavier, bursting, consistent, fast-paced style from the other backing instrumentals that really brought back more of that guttural core to the song. So I'm like, okay, now we're starting to see them mix the new with the old and really trying to create something a little bit more for themselves. Take a look at something like Irreversible, which is in the first half, but I do have to talk about because the verses, the drums, and the unclean vocals are more melodic, and they give this lighter prog guitar. They have this more melodic feel to it. Again, the guttural punch is still there with that unclean vocal style, so more melodic, but I do enjoy it. Continuum, the unclean vocals are over a much more melodic style of work, but then when the bursting drums come in and this more hard rock guitar, they bring it to the forefront and make the song much heavier in terms of the overall first half, so I was a big fan of this as well. And then the Hypnotist, where this more gent prog distortion on the guitar contrasts against these heavy unclean vocals and rapid drumming. Again, the guttural sound is back, but they're mixing it so well with this new, more prog gent kind of thing that they're trying to do that I can see where this is going to work. Also, shout out to the clean vocals from Jesse on this one because as the albums have gone on, his clean vocals seem to be getting more and better, and on Drift, it continued on. Take a look at Orchid, where the more post-hardcore feeling chorus, especially with this high-pitched prog guitar that they're going with there, connects to the clean vocals so much in this lighter, more fun-fueled kind of way, and it just worked out very well in my opinion. And then Hourglass, the controlled clean chorus on this one has some melodic feel to it that gives the song a rather beautiful feeling, mixing with melodic pacing on the song as well. So overall, when it comes to Drift, I'm not necessarily as big of a fan as I was, I should say, on Augment and on Impulse because of the more prog sound kind of just take away from that guttural heaviness. But there are points I do like about it, especially in the second half when they kind of mix the old and the new together. So I'm not the biggest fan of it as I was the other two, but I do like a good amount of it. So now taking a look at Neon, which came out in 2018, and the band decided to do what they did on Drift by keeping that more progressive metalcore style in there. But they also had a lot more of that electronic influence in there as well to really smooth things out. And again, full disclosure, that's not something I really resonate well with, again, because it does make it feel like that raw, unpolished sound that really makes me connect with real life a little bit more is taken out of there. Don't get me wrong though, there are times where bands do put in some of that more electronic production, a little bit more of that smoothness to it, and also mix it with some heaviness, and I really do like it. Falling in Reverse, especially what they did on the trilogy, three things with Losing My Mind, Losing My Life, and Drugs, and of course Popular Monster, big fans of that. So again, it's not going to hit me as well as it could, but there are instances where it does. So what did I really think about Neon? And one of the things I wasn't the biggest fan of was just, again, how that electronic feel and how that more polished sound really took out that guttural gut punch that ERRA had on their first two albums as their core, because I loved how the contrast worked, especially with the lighter guitars, but especially with that more electronic feel in these songs. Again, the more like a polished kind of style over it just doesn't necessarily work as well for me. Take a look at a song like Monolith, where the high production of the sound gave the song more of this like feeling like it was inspired by Muse, which, don't get me wrong, that's not bad. Muse is a great band, but because of how high polished it was, it just really didn't connect with it, especially when the unclean vocals try to come in and make that guttural feel to it. It just did not fit very well for me. And then Signal Fire, with the electronic polished sound, really took away from the guttural core, the heaviness of the unclean vocals, and it was prevalent in like what felt like more like a hard rock track. So I'm like, oh boy, not enjoying this as much. However, there were times where that electronic feel and more distortion on the guitar especially really kind of created something that gave these songs a little more of a dynamic feel and actually worked out for the better in my mind. Take a look at something like Valhalla, where the high distortion on this like Architects kind of inspired guitar style really contrasted heavily to the unclean verses and the heavy verse that was behind it to create this more full dynamic song, a little bit more update from what we saw on Augment and Impulse. Take a look at Disarray as well, because the medium paced verses have this higher pitched guitar showing with like unclean vocals to show greatness in the contrast. Plus the clean vocals hit this high range and they don't crack, so this one was just great compare and contrast overall. The mix was really well done on this one. One other thing I was a big fan of was, I gotta go back to the clean vocals from Jesse on this one, because ERRA has been consistently using these more melodic, clean choruses, especially to contrast against the heavier, faster, guttural gut punch that the unclean vocals are going for. It's a great contrast, but with Jesse's vocals maturing, especially from 2011 to 2018, this just keeps getting better and better. Take a look at Hyper Reality because the clean melodic chorus contrasts against the heavy sound of the verses, and again, this was mixing old ERRA and new ERRA together right here. Breach is another one where the softer tone on the vocals really lets the instrumentation take prominence with the rapid drumming and higher pitched guitars. Again, this is just overall a really nice mix. When it comes to Neon though, not gonna lie, out of the 5 albums that ERRA has put out so far, this is my least favorite of the 5. And the reason I say least favorite is because this isn't that bad of an album in my opinion. For a lot of the times when those heavy, more electronic programmed, higher distortion guitars really kind of come in and work against the songs, they really take and smooth them out a little bit more and really kind of lose some of that guttural, gut punching energy and the rawness that the band had in the past. But when I literally looked at the song list and I was looking at which ones I like, which ones I dislike, I think I was only dislike or heavily neutral on 3 to 10. Otherwise, I was in the somewhat like or like category. So again, if this is my least favorite and I was only heavily neutral or dislike 3 out of 10, that ain't bad. Now going into 2021 with the self-titled album from ERRA, and I was a little nervous about this one, especially after seeing what Alan Harrington had said about it, but after going through it, what I ended up finding was, yes, they did kind of try and pick up where they left off on Neon, but in my opinion, they ended up focusing more on what they did on Impulse and Augment and tried blending a little bit what they did on Drift and Neon as well to kind of mix this older, more guttural, gut punch sound in with some of this more new progressive metalcore and sometimes more electronically enhanced and programmed stuff here as well. So again, trying to mix the old with the new on this one. And for your self-titled album, kind of trying to do that for your 5th one. Wow, that makes sense. So when I looked at this album, especially in the first half, I thought the band took a lot more chances in terms of really trying to take that more progressive metalcore style and also using some more of that higher electronic distortion, higher pitched guitars that have this more electronic polished feel to it to really contrast against that heavier backing instrumentals. And for the most part, I was iffy on this, or sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't work. Snowblood, there was this higher synth distortion in the verses, really not seen anywhere else in their discography at this point, but the guttural, unclean vocals really give this great sound overall in contrast. When it came to Gungrave, man, I know I Nick Nocturnal reacted to this one, was like, whoa, because I really missed that old guttural metalcore sound with the lighter guitar tone and the synth in the chorus mix. Again, you're mixing a lot more of that old with a little bit of the new, but again, this was like Gungrave, this was that gut punch I was hoping for. Take a look at House of Glass, because the more prog programming end up smothering the unclean vocals in the chorus, and the smoother chorus vocals overall really made this heavy sound get way too smooth. So again, that guttural feel is just gone at this point. And then Electric Twilight, because they focused on the slower pace in the overall song and really took away from a lot of the heaviness and the weight that the band has consistently had. I do like the experimentation on it, but it just didn't necessarily really hit for me. Sorry about the flub up on that one. But in the second half, this is where I really like their self-titled album, because I thought they blended a lot of that old, more guttural, heavy feeling sound in with some of this more new progressive metalcore and a little bit more electronic inspired stuff as well, because now we're getting this newer feeling from ERRA, but also bringing back that metal guttural core that they had. And you're really seeing the band really come to the fore in the second half of their self-titled album. Take a look at Scorpion, because the song has this more spacey vibe, given the Architects inspired guitar riff, but the rough, unclean vocals just bring back that guttural feel and mix it together so well within it. Take a look at Eidolon, I think I said that right, I hope I did, because the twanger guitar is odd in my opinion, especially for the lead, but how it takes it back to that prog metalcore sound alongside harder backing and heavy, unclean vocals, the guttural weight just returns right here with the newer sound overall. And then Remnant, because the higher prog guitar sound in the verses gives the song a lighter feel, but the heavy, unclean vocals come in, contrast heavily against it, get the mix with the new and the old. So when it comes to their self-titled album, man, I'm really glad I was inspired by how well it was received to do this, because yes, the band is going much more of a prog metalcore direction, but I am seeing them really kind of mix the old with the new here to really kind of have that complete sound going through their 5 albums. And really going into hopefully the return of touring in 2021 with something like this, so I'm big on it. So overall, when it comes to ERRA and me figuring out if I like their music, I really liked Impulse. Augment was freaking awesome. Drift and Neon were not necessarily my cup of tea, but there were a good amount of points on there that I really liked them, especially because even though they really tried to like smooth out more of this like prog metalcore style, metalcore, my bad, and this more electronic distortion and synth over it, it wasn't necessarily my cup of tea, but when they kept that guttural sound in there and mix it in, it really did work out well. And then on their self-titled in 2021, seeing the old and the new really come together to form this really brand new core sound for ERRA, I really did enjoy it. So looking at their music, what's the verdict? Do I like it? And the answer is yes. Time for section 2, which is the image and gimmick section of this episode. And of course, I'm going to take a look at how the band looks, take a look at their music videos, and take a look at how they perform live, and let's really figure this out. Taking a look at their image though, I was looking, I'm like, nothing really stands out too much to me on this. This seems rather neutral. Taking a look at how they look, they're dressing rather conservatively in terms of, you know, I'm seeing them kind of wear some jackets, leather jackets, or just like standard jackets as well, pants, button-up shirts, and maybe some t-shirts as well. Just nothing that really stands out too heavy. However, one thing I do have to say about it is taking a look at some of the pictures, they do focus in a little bit more on the darker colors as well, dark tones, which really do work well in the metalcore sense. This isn't anything I'm against, or this isn't anything that's going to just make me stray away from the band or make me just dive deeper into them. This kind of image is something that's going to make me think, oh, whatever. I'm neutral to it. That's the best way to put it. I'm neutral to it. So when it came to their music videos, the two most prominent ones I saw were Divisionary and Snowblood, and I saw a rather similar style, but it kind of made sense because what they ended up doing was they ended up having their stuff dressed in like, you know, that more like classic kind of stuff, especially focusing on some darker colors as well. But in the backing, they had a lot of lights flashing, again, brighter lights, and they kind of really fit in well with that more progressive style, especially with some more electronic distortion, especially on those guitars. But how they did it though, by having the guys really be in this more shadow kind of style as well, to really kind of bring that darkness in there, they're really mixing the old with the new subtly on their videos, with the flashlights kind of mixing more with that prog metal style, but then the shadows really giving more of this deeper, darker, again, guttural feel to the video. So I was intrigued by this, but then again, these videos were made for them in 2021, so these videos were probably made at some point in 2020 during the pandemic. I gotta look at videos from earlier on to see what they look like. But when I took a look at their older music videos like Hybrid Earth and Pattern Interrupt, I saw the same kind of thing going on here. Take a look at Hybrid Earth. It's very similar to what they did here, where you're gonna have the heavier lights really kind of in the background, but the use of shadow really mixes in with that older and newer style. And then take a look at Pattern Interrupt. And what they do on Pattern Interrupt, in my opinion, is they use that floodlight again as the heavy, lighter style, especially where the guitar is going, but the use of shadows that comes off of it gives it more of this guttural feel, which is at their core as well. So when it comes to their music videos, again, I'm not the biggest fan of that. They're rather similar with the ones that I saw, but the subtlety and the nuance that they went with on them to really bring forward that newer, more progressive metalcore sound inside of their guttural core at the beginning, as with the shadows, this was pretty dang cool. So of course I got to see what the band looks like live. I went to some live videos over on YouTube as well, and I was a little surprised at what I saw. And when I looked at them, looked at what the crowd was doing, looked at how the band was interacting, the band reminded me more of this melodic, energetic style that would have been similar to like if August Burns Red went melodic. And the reason I say that is because the heaviness in the music is there, the energy is there, but the guys on stage, they weren't as energetic, they weren't as crazy, they weren't really flowing with the energy, they were more focused again on the playing, which is okay. However, where I'm not going to be as big of a fan of that is because as the crowd goes, you know, the crowd is going to have energy, but I've seen the times where the band's put a lot of energy on stage and the crowd feeds off that. It's a feeding frenzy back and forth to the point where when Motionless in White plays Eternally Yours, their body's still flying all throughout the freaking venue and everyone's having a great time. And yeah, I said Motionless in White on that one because they got heavier songs than Eternally Yours, but they always end with that now, and I've seen it happen. But again, it's something where their sound is still going to create that heavy fever pitch feel within the crowd as well. I just kind of wish from the live videos I saw, the band would kind of, you know, work alongside with it. So when it comes to the image and the gimmick, when it comes to how they look and how they present themselves image-wise, it's very consistent, very neutral to metalcore. So I'm like, you know, I'm not really the biggest fan of this, but it's not going to be hit or miss. Their videos, though, again, I saw a rather similarity between them, so I'm like, oh, it's not necessarily the best way to go about it, but I love the concept behind it and how it works to really bring out their different sounds, their different cores, from progressive metalcore as a newer sound, and then that heavier guttural sound, especially how they use the shadows in all their videos with their earlier stuff as well. So it does make a lot of sense, but the consistency is where I'm going to have be more neutral on that one. Live shows, again, the music is going to create the heavy fever pitch that's going to go in there, but I wish the band would take a little bit more on the fun side and less on the, you know, focus on playing side, like just stand there, look at the fretboard kind of thing. So when it comes down to it, their image of their gimmick, I'm being neutral on it. Doesn't hurt, doesn't help though. So now take a look at the social media accounts on the band exclusively, seeing how they connect, interact with the community fans, how the community fans interact with each other. I've taken a look at the 3 major places. Facebook, they have 164,000 followers. Twitter, about 20.7 thousand. And Instagram, around 70,000 there. But of course, it's not the amount of followers that you have, it's how you connect with the fans. Taking a look at Facebook, not necessarily the biggest fan of how they do this. Again, you've got a lot of followers on their Facebook page. Yes, followers, likes, whatever you want to call it. They think they're calling it followers now, especially how they had it on that page. But when I took a look at the posts, I do like what they do with the posts as well, because they're multimedia posts. They're posting about something with the music, they're adding pictures, they're adding videos, they're adding links as well, so you're going to give the fans more content. I'm a big fan of that. But when I take a look at the engagement down below, this is where it gets concerning, because most of their comments had less, or most of their posts, had less than 100 comments on them. For a band that has 164,000 followers and you only have like 90 comments, sometimes I saw like single-digit comments, I thought, that's not necessarily the best. And then jumping in the comments, yes, the fans are going to be rather positive, but there's not a lot of connection going on there where the fans are commenting, no one's really kind of creating a dialogue back and forth, and it's just, again, it's positive, which is nice, but it just seems less substance filled. And then taking a look at the band, there's really no interaction with those comments. Well, there's no replies or anything. When I looked at Varsity last week, again, this is something that Varsity really topped on, not only the band responding, but the guys from the band as well responding on Facebook. So this one's going to be a big miss for me, especially with the amount of people that they have on that page. Twitter is a much different story. The band has their fewest followers on Twitter with 20.7 thousand followers, but they do things a lot differently on Twitter. And what I like about it is the fact that I took a look at their Twitter page, and most of the tweets are retweets of people talking about the band, liking the band, and doing different things as well. And I absolutely love that, because you're connecting with the fans in that sort of way. You're giving the fans that affirmation that you are listening, that you appreciate what they're saying about you and what they're doing for you. And again, there's that connection there. Taking a look at some of the replies as well. Yes, they do tweet reply people. Again, it's not the biggest thing in the world, because they do a lot of emojis up, a lot of very simple replies to those fans. But the fact they're replying on this one is a lot better than what I saw on Facebook. However, one thing you have to give credit to the band is I posted on Twitter about the band twice. Once for a Song of the Day feature, and once was the tweet after listening to Impulse being like, I think I'm hooked on this already. And the band did like them both. So again, even on tweets that you don't see the likes on, like, they're liking this up. They're connecting with the fans here on Twitter as well. I'm a bigger fan of ERRA on Twitter, but I want to see what they do on Instagram as well and see how this fits in. So now going into Instagram for ERRA, they got 70,000 followers on their Instagram page, and it's a lot more similar to Facebook than it is to Twitter. What I mean by that is, again, the posts are going to be a little bit more multimedia. They're going to have all the pictures connected to them, some videos as well. But when I took a look at the comments, this is where, again, it's more similar to Facebook, because I never really saw the band or any of the band members comment back on people on the band's page. And again, that's a huge thing, especially with Instagram being a lot more prevalent in today's society than Twitter and Facebook are in terms of musicians and bands and everything with the rock and metal scene. However, with the fans that are in those comments, they're not necessarily as just unequivocally positive as they were in Facebook, but it's not like they're not positive. It's, what I mean by that is, there are more comments going back and forth between people. There's more discussion going on between people and fans about the artist as well. So I'm liking this a little bit more, but then I'd love to see the band get on this a little bit more in terms of the comments to really kind of connect better with fans. So overall, when it comes to their social media, the connection, the community fans, how the fans connect with each other, not the biggest fan on this one, and it's because of how Facebook and Instagram are so lightly used in terms of overall fan connection from the band directly. Twitter does a much better job at this for the band, and I love what they do here, but then again, being more neutral-like on Twitter than being more neutral low on Facebook and Instagram, I mean, the neutral low is going to end up outweighing it. So that's that. Alrighty, now it's time to put this all together. When it comes down to the music, I absolutely love the guttural core that they had, especially in the first jumps, and the lighter guitar tones really contrast against the heavier overall backing, and the unclean vocals really working well. As the albums went on with like Drift and Neon, again, the prog metalcore sound really kind of came into the foray a little bit more, kind of smoothing everything out, and I did not like it nearly as much because it did lose some of that guttural sound, but there were a good amount of times where I did like it. Their self-titled album, on the other hand, especially the second half, I thought really blended the old and the new together very well, so you know the music is going to be an unequivocal yes. The Image and the Gimmick, again, neutral on because their image really doesn't do anything for me. Their music videos, while they're kind of similar, which isn't the best way, especially the ones I watched, again, the idea behind them and the subtlety behind them really works out well. And the potential for live shows to really be just an overall fantastic experience. Again, the potential is there, but I didn't really get to see any of that, especially from the way the band members are acting on stage, because they're a little bit more focused on playing instead of on just going out there putting on a fantastic show while also focusing on playing as well. So again, I'm more neutral that. When it comes to their social media accounts though, I love what they're doing on Twitter a little bit more, but when it comes to what they do on Facebook and Instagram to connect with the fans, again, I think it's really lacking, so I'm not the biggest fan of it on that one, so it's a little more like neutral dislike. But of course, what's going to be the most important thing in this is the music, and I was hooked from album one, and I really did like their self-titled album that came out in 2021, especially how they connected the old with the new together. So when I asked the question, do I like the band ERRA? The answer is yes. Yes, I do. Can't wait to see them live in 2021 or 2022, hopefully when they're touring the 2021 self-titled album ERRA, and can't wait to do another one of these. So, hey, also, one last thing, guys from ERRA, if you are some reason watching this, hit me up because I'd love to have you guys on the Chord Progression Podcast talk about your music, talk about this video as well, talk about your reaction to it, and just whatever else we come up with. I'm doing the same with Varsity, love to do the same with you guys. So that's it for me today, guys. Thank you for watching this video of the Kevin Figures Out series. Again, I do like ERRA. So let's end with the hat flip. Okay, to be fair.
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 I caught that one. To be fair. See ya!